Welcome to the special council meeting on the 6th of April, and to those that might be listening via our live streaming, welcome to you as well. If we can please stand for the acknowledgement of country and the local government prayer and service acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of our beautiful lands and our surrounding waters, the Ngarrindjeri and the Ramangeri people. As a community, we recognise and we respect their cultural connection with these lands and waters.
Mighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change for the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Amen.
We gratefully acknowledge the men and women of the Navy, Army and Air Force who made the supreme sacrifice in the preservation of Australia's freedom and democracy. We also proclaim our gratitude to those who return to us.
Please be seated. Please note we do have apologies from Councillor Mann and also from Councillor Henderson. And the other thing that I'd remind you of is in relation to if you have any conflict of interest, actual material or perceived in relation to any part of the agenda, please note that and declare it. We now move on to item 4.1, the draft asset management plans in relation to going out for public consultation. And the first recommendation is that council receive and note the draft asset management plans, the public consultation report. If someone would like to move that way, thank you, Councillor Hales. And a seconder, thank you, Councillor Schofield. Did either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a clarification, I believe, through the asset management plan with the Capital Works program. My understanding through our workshops, we all sort of had a consensus whether there were things in or things out. There's two there which I see still in, which is Ridgehaven Construction. I thought, to my understanding, that was to be excluded for next year, or 22-23. And the other one was the Seagull Avenue footpath was to be excluded until the master plan for the bikeway was finished to see exactly what that. But that's still in there for next financial year. So my understanding that the feeling was around the table was that those two items would not be included in the asset management plan.
I might ask Kelly to speak to that. She's got all of that information there.
Could you provide me with the, sorry, through the chair, the page that's particularly on, and it'll just help refresh my memory. Basically, notes that I took across the workshops depended on a general consensus and feel within the room. If it does need to be amended, I can happily take them out with the council decision for the adoption.
Sure. Page 30 for the Ridge Avenue construction, which is halfway down the page. 22-23. And the other one was a page 32, which is more or less the fourth item down from the top of the page. Sixth item, sorry.
Yep, so through the chair, so Ridge Avenue was requested to be brought forward to 21-22 by another elected member. And so that was discussed in the workshops with the general consensus being that it didn't become brought forward and stayed within the plan at its previous planned time, which was in 22-23. So that's what's happened with that one. It has gone back to where it was before. And the other project was Seagull Avenue. That was a footpath project, was it?
That's right, on page 32, about the sixth item down.
Yep, that is in there at the moment. It may have been one item that I missed or thought was still staying in there. There were a few that were taken out that had to do with the bike path, but I was under the impression that that wasn't one of them. But if I'm wrong, I'm happy to move it.
Look, I'll just raise it again because I've said it before, because we have this master plan being developed for the Encounter Bikeway, which runs along Seagull Avenue, which is part of the master planning. To put a footpath in there now before the plan's finished may be contradictory, because we may have to rip it up because it may not suit if we decide to go down the option. So that's why I thought we'd delay it or defer it until we did the master plan to see what we agree on.
Thank you, councillor Kemp. Kelly?
If I can, just through the mayor, in terms of what's in here, we have got a bit of a double up in terms of what's in the asset management plans and the budget workshops that you're also going through at the moment. So it has been a bit difficult combining those two and working out which projects are in and out. There would still be the possibility, even if you left it in the asset management plans, for you to not do it as an endorsed project in 21-22. But I'm happy to take it out if that's the feeling.
Look, I'm quite happy to have it taken out, but I'm only one person. So, but if the rest of the chamber prefers to have it in and allow the consultation to take place, get feedback either way, I'm quite happy that way as well. But at the moment, I prefer it to be removed.
Thank you, councillor Kemp. We're still on the first recommendation about receiving and noting. Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor. On this asset management plan, on the public consultation, I think this is a risky thing to go out to the public with. I think it's missing some large projects that are not mentioned in here. We've got the three that are talked about for the next 5 years.
Councillor Robertson, can I just interrupt you? What you're talking about, I think, is really important, and it may be worth bringing up when we're talking about recommendation 2, which is proceeding to the public consultation. This recommendation is really receiving and noting the plan. So if we could deal with that first recommendation first, then we can get into the detail of the plan itself in recommendation 2.
My understanding, Mayor, was that the second recommendation is purely about public consultation.
It is, and if there's anything in the asset management plan that you don't want in there, that you don't want to proceed to public consultation and want to take out, I think that would be the point in which we take them out.
Okay, I'll speak to that in the second motion then.
Yep. So we're on the first motion at the moment, moved by councillor Hales and seconded by councillor Schofield. Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the draft asset management plan? I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation, that council proceed to public consultation on the asset management plans as provided under a separate cover and as per the engagement plan provided at attachment A, commencing on the 8th of April and concluding on the 3rd of May. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Hales, thank you. And seconding that, councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Littley? Councillor Robertson, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, Mayor, coming back to where I was before, in the sense that this, to me, this is, this report is going out public consultation is deficient in that we have several major projects that are not mentioned here. And also that it's defining what's going to happen over the next 5 years. And to me, that we haven't even flagged that there are going to be other strategic projects which are going to be forced on us, such as the changeover of the council's enterprise resource program. And it doesn't get a mention as a major project in here. I know we're waiting for a consultant to tell us what to do, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a very major project and it's not mentioned here. So as terms of our major projects, which I think that Director of Finance was saying last time that she was only including ones that were valued at more than 3 million, but there are quite a number of others, the important projects that are at the $1 million level. But I don't think it gives a true picture of the challenges we face with regard to private sector development in the Anchorage Hotel and the car park that comes with it. Also the relationship between the huge operating costs and therefore the impact on rates that come from the second and third of our major projects here, which is potentially the sport and recreation facilities and the arts and culture precinct. So I think that public consultation, it won't get the full picture. So to me is a real concern.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I might ask Director Kelly Knight-Stacey to respond to that. You said that there's several projects not flagged here. You talked about the enterprise bargaining that will be carried out, challenges of public sector development, private sector development rather, the Anchorage and McKinley Street car park, and the operating costs in relating to sporting facilities that may or may not be undertaken. Perhaps Kelly can let you know where that stands.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I agree with you, Councillor Robertson, in terms of some of the costings that we don't know. We can't include yet because they're purely a guess. But in terms of the asset management plans, the asset management plans themselves don't really pull out any significant projects within those documents. There is a full list of the projects that could be included in the appendices. The long-term financial plan does have a section on significant projects and includes some of the larger ones that Council is looking at, as well as some of those that we've added based on the conversations at the last workshop to include some of the other items that fell below the threshold but were still significant in terms of the community and delivery to the community. We haven't delved into the numbers on some items that we're still waiting for costings on or recommendations or a direction on, and things like adding in amounts for the operations or management of various facilities that we don't even know how much they're going to cost to build yet is a really difficult thing for us to surmise and include in a plan. In terms of the long-term financial plan, there are some estimates in there around some of those ideas in terms of the amounts that flow on from the construction of capital. So where we build something, a building, whatever it is, there is formulas within the long-term financial plan that calculates depreciation and repairs and maintenance flowing on from that. But in terms of actual activities that are happening within those assets, if there are buildings, we've only included what we know or have a reasonable ability to calculate. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the two different documents have different things in them. The asset management plans are around the projects themselves, and the long-term financial plan is purely around the dollars and what council can afford, even though we have included some significant projects in there that we thought the community would be interested in. I'm happy to add in additional projects in there if council would like them added in, but it's difficult to say how much things will cost when we don't know all the information yet.
If I might, Mayor, throw the question back to Kelly. Don't you think that when we're going out to community consultation on the asset management plans, if the community looks at this document and sees that here it is on top of page 4, the AMP details the high level of capital expenditure over the next 5 years with an average of that period of 17 million. This is primarily due to the inclusion of expenditure on the following 3 strategic projects. So these are the 3 that are mentioned. What happens if the car park comes out of left field with, you know, $4 million or something else? What happens if the boating facility comes out with a grant from the federal government of 4 or 5 million? What will happen is the Enterprise Resource Program is going to cost us, my bet, $5 million over a couple of years, but it's not in here. So, and that impacts on so many other things in terms of what we can do. The sweat and time and energy is going to suck out of council staff. So to me, it's just a sort of presents things that are going to be, people will think I don't know about the Main Street precinct. I think people don't like the number 5 in particular, but, you know, sports and recreational facilities, yay! Arts and culture precinct, yay! And then we're all done. But there's more serious stuff to be dealt with in this asset management planning on the business of here, the inclusion of the following 3 strategic projects for our new capital expenditure over the next 5 years.
Through the Mayor, so that particular item that you're referring to on page 4 is just the agenda report. That isn't the document that's going out to the public, for starters. So we've been putting together some fact sheets that will be going out to the community that basically highlight a number of the projects that are included in the asset management plans. And the sort of spend across each of the categories of the asset management plans, both in terms of renewal and new. So this is an agenda report that was written for council, for elected members that have been to all of the workshops. So we have other documentation that we're currently finalising. In terms of the corporate system software, I know you've mentioned that a few times, it isn't actually included in the asset management plans, because we don't have and don't need to have an asset management plan for software. So it is included in the long-term financial plan and mentioned on page 23, but we don't know what that looks like yet. We don't know the timeframes, we don't know what we're buying, what we're leasing, what we're using the cloud for. And so it's really difficult to be able to provide a clear and accurate estimate for the community to understand where we're going. What we would hope to do is, once we have that information, to provide that to the community going forward. And it's important to remember all of these documents, the asset management plans and the long-term financial plan, are reviewed every year. So as soon as we get some information around a boating facility or any other major project that changes things, we can either update or review the documents then, or provide council assistance with its decision-making process by showing you how doing something extra impacts the 10-year long-term financial plan that will help you make the decision, so that you can then, you know, feel confident that we can either afford it or not, and whether or not we can do it as well as all the other projects, or something else needs to be taken out.
Thank you, Kelly.
I thought that the purchase of software, I could have heard incorrectly, but I thought I heard you before say that the purchase of software would be a capital expenditure. You've just said that it wouldn't be.
I said that we don't know which way we're going to go yet. So it does depend on whether you go with a cloud version, a license, or you actually buy software. If we're buying software that has a significant cost, we would be able to call it an asset and capitalise it. If we're looking at something that is a cloud-based version, we wouldn't be able to capitalise the software itself because it would be a licence fee, but we would be able to capitalise the cost of configuring that software to make it fit for purpose. So the staff resources, the backfill, the duplication that would need to happen, we would be able to capitalise that, but it largely depends on the program itself and how much customisation it needs. And that's the sort of data that we're waiting on.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Littley.
Yeah, question. Just, we're talking about public consultation. This is the recommendation we're voting on is with relation to public consultation. Can I ask the question of a comparative public consultation process? What's the response rate been from the public when we've gone down the path of public consultation on something that is comparative? Last year's long-term financial plan, say, what's the response rate been?
Through the Mayor, it's wouldn't be greater than probably around 2 dozen. Quite low on the asset management plans,
yeah.
A bit more feedback on the long-term financial plans.
So that suggests it's not of high interest and priority to our public, not like a toilet block that's had 160 responses.
Councillor Littley, are there any, you've already spoken, Councillor Robertson? A question? Well, you can, as long as it doesn't have a huge preamble, your question is to?
Is to, whoever is doing the public consultation, because that's what I'm focusing on now, is public consultation for this. Yeah, it's true what Kelly said, what the Director of Finance said, about the public consultation last year. I remember it was either the long-term financial plan or the asset management plan. There were 12 responses, and I personally organised 8 of them because I went out and got a couple of communities.
Councillor Robson, what's your question?
My question is, are we going to include in this applies to the long-term financial plan as well as this one, we haven't got in here the kitchen cabinet or kitchen discussion package that was there, which was developed by Michelle, I think. It's very good. It's the ones I used last year to get some significant public feedback. It's not mentioned here. I just wondered if it's in there, but it's not going to be used.
Kelly?
Through the Mayor, we haven't included it this time because it's significant work to get it set up, and there wasn't a great deal of feedback received through that method. Like you said, you did the bulk of that. We do find that in terms of public consultation, the annual business plan and budget does provide a much higher level of consultation because it directly affects ratepayers, I guess, in the year that's just coming up. Whereas a lot of these things seem a fair way out and they're subject to change. So that could be one of the reasons why we don't get a lot of feedback, particularly for the asset management plans. Whereas when it comes up and people can see their particular roads or projects around their residents, that's when we get more feedback.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Seek your advice, Mayor Jenkins, on the previous discussion about Seagull Avenue with the footpath. I'm still not quite sure if there's a consensus to remove it or keep it in. So could you please advise the best way of dealing with this? I can move a motion on notice if you prefer me to do that, to remove it, or do you prefer to do a 2/3 majority? I'm just seeking your advice, the best way to deal with this, because at the moment,
I'll
I'm
hand
not
that
quite
over
sure.
to Kelly, may be able to let us know where it is at the moment.
You could be quite formal and make an amendment to the motion to proceed to public consultation subject to the exclusion of a particular project, if that's how you would like to do it. That being said, I'm happy to take a consensus and just take it out, which isn't very formal. So probably the more correct way would be to just add that on at the end, or do a separate motion.
My understanding is that it is in, yes, and I think that's what the Seagull Avenue residents want it to be in, and to look at it. Is that your understanding, Councillor Kemp?
My understanding from them, they don't want it in. But again, that's why I'm asking the chamber to make a decision to either seek public consultation on it, or we make a decision now. I'm just asking your advice, the best way of doing it.
I would think that if it's going to public consultation and it's in, if they don't want it in and if they want it changed, that's an opportunity for them to provide that information to council through the public consultation and let us know what it is that they want, what it is they like about it, what it is they don't like about it. If we take it out, then it doesn't give them any room to actually make any suggestions to council because it's not in there to comment on. So I would say keep it in, and then they can provide that feedback to council through that public consultation. We're not endorsing it, it's just going out to public consultation.
So sought your advice, Mayor Jenkins. Thank you for that.
Is there any other comment? Charles?
Yeah, only because of Seagull Avenue again. Seagull Avenue is always going to be part of the bikeway as far as Alexandrina are concerned, I'm sure. It's an extremely narrow street and it conducts traffic in 2 directions. People are parked one side, not the other, when there's a yellow line, but there is a yellow line. Regardless, they still park there at times. There's people walking, people riding bikes. It's steep, it's not, at times it's steep, and there's children trailing behind, and this has been the concern all along. Yeah, we can put this out to public consultation, but we can confuse people too, because as we've seen in the magazine that was sent to us all, Beulah Road in Adelaide has become a bikeway from the foothills right through to the Victoria Park Racecourse. So the entire road has been made people-friendly, bike-friendly, vehicle-friendly. And I know that Alexandrina Council are working on this as well, and surely this is part of the proposal that should be put to them. If they can do it in Adelaide, if they can do it in a major road like that and then avoid people using areas like Nord Parade and not having to run their bikes down there, then surely we can do it on one of the quietest roads we've got for most of the year, but very, very busy at peak times.
So look, I've been up and spoken to the residents of Seagull Avenue, and as you know, the council did some counting of cars over the Easter break, along with Alexandrina Council in relation to Seagull Avenue. I received an email about that this afternoon by one of the residents and have passed that on because they weren't happy with the way that that had been done. Having this asset management plans and the public consultations is a perfect opportunity for the residents of Seagull Avenue to provide some input. As Kelly said, we only got around about 12 people gave input last year. I'm sure that this year there'll be a lot more input, and we can have a look at how that Seagull Avenue needs to be developed or should be developed. And there's some very good ideas have come from some of the residents up there that I spoke to. And I know that Councillor Little has been up there and spoken to residents as well. And the Mayor of Alexandrina and I went up there last week and met with residents and had a chat to them. So I would say keep it in the asset management plan because it gives the community up there a chance to actually provide input into that and say what they want. And by that stage, we'll also have the information back from the traffic management study that was conducted over Easter. Are there any further comments in relation to recommendation 2? Councillor Hales, do you want to close the debate? In that case, I'll put it to the chamber. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now move on to the draft long-term financial plan, the public consultation in relation to that. And the first recommendation, as usual, is that Council receive and note the report. Councillor Hales moving that way and Councillor Schofield seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The second recommendation is that Council proceed to public consultation on the long-term financial plan as provided under separate cover and as per the engagement plan provided at attachment A, commencing on 8th of April and concluding on the 3rd of May. Moving that way, Councillor Hales, and seconding Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I note that we won't be doing the kitchen consultation, I guess, on this one either. Great pity, I think. It was a very good product that we had. Just a couple of issues on the page 14 on the long-term, on the communications and engagement plan. If there was some way that we could frame the debate or the feedback we want to get from residents in terms of the 3 key financial indicators that we use, if we could frame that in a way that what happens when you move away out of the ratio, target ratio, what happens to rates? Because I think that will give people more of an incentive to provide feedback to the plan. So here it just says, is council raising enough income? That's the operating surplus ratio, the net financial liabilities rate and the asset sustainability ratio. It's the issue of how does that impact on rates. On that page 16, I think that we really should make an effort. I noticed that, I said before, that kitchen discussion pack is gone. But I think we should find a way to try and engage the non-residents, non-residential ratepayers, and perhaps we could have another crack at having a workshop for in Adelaide for non-resident ratepayers, whether that be at a site like Unley, or maybe if there's, I don't think there's any more holidays coming up why we could get some support from people. And I don't think that the mail out of questionnaires is worthwhile doing. That's largely a waste. But I think it's important with the long-term financial plan that we make the effort to involve the non-residents, and we've got nothing here apart from the usual suspects that return us close to a zero level of feedback from residents. And a key indicator on page 18 would be, it's not just visits to Your Say on Victor Harbor website, but also if we held public meetings, which we don't appear to be doing except for audit committee and elected members, that the numbers of people that come. I think if we make the effort to make the topic digestible, understandable for people, I think we might only get 30 or 40 or 50 maybe, the maximum I would have thought, but at least we can make the effort to make sure that we go out to, we can ask people's questions, whereas with the normal methodologies that we use, the asking questions is not possible. It's not an easy topic.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I might ask Kelly to respond to some of those queries that you had.
Thank you, through the Mayor. A couple of the items you mentioned, Councillor Robertson, around trying to contact our non-residential ratepayers. One thing that wasn't in the plan itself was the rates notices that are going out for the fourth quarter. We'll have a mail out, we'll have a section in there on all the community consultation that we're undertaking at the moment, and included in that will be these two highlighted and how they can have their say. So non-resident ratepayers will get that mail out with the fourth quarter notices, and we're also pulling out the ones that won't get one because they've paid in full to send them separately as well, so that they'll be aware that we're doing it. That's one piece that we're doing. Also, in terms of the kitchen cabinet feedback pack, whatever we were calling it, we can use the feedback form that's being put together for the consultation and use that to facilitate group discussions as well. So we can have a little bit of a look at that as well going forward.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, so if I might ask a question of Kelly, Mayor, because my understanding is that in terms of the rates notices, that if you're sending them out to people that are paying by quarter, that essentially, what, 85 or 90% of our ratepayers pay up front the full year, and so they're not going to get that.
No, so through the Mayor, that percentage is more so around our local residents, but what we will do is actually the ones that aren't going to get a rate notice, because they've paid in full, that are non-residential ratepayers, we're looking at seeing what that will cost for us to send out just the flyer itself that lets them know about that, as well as a separate exercise.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any further comments from Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. Firstly, just a couple of things which I did mention to our finance manager earlier. On page 5, there's a summary of the key financial indicators. The net financial liabilities ratio, I'm just a little bit concerned about the wording there. I think that's misleading. So I don't know if anyone else agrees with me. It just says for the net financial liabilities ratio, at what level is council covering its borrowing liability? So to me, that says, you know, are council paying their repayments? Are they meeting their interest repayments? And it's not. a tool to, which shows our level of debt. So if you look on page 14, where it actually goes into the, to the full explanation of that indicator, it does say, more in line. So I don't know, could that be changed?
Through the Mayor, yes, we can have a look at that. Essentially, that wording is basically saying that for what we're looking at, where the target's been adopted as 100% maximum, we're basically saying that 100% of our operating revenue is required to cover our debt. And so that's it. It's a correct statement that's there, but it may not be that clear for residents. And I'm happy to have a look at how we describe that better on that page. So that's not a problem at all. We'll look at that.
No, fair enough. Maybe I didn't read it all properly, but I found it misleading anyway. The next thing that I would just like to ask a question really as well, on page 16, where it goes into our debt levels, a little graph there, and in 10 years they're suggesting that we could be in virtually $30 million worth of debt. My question is, in relation to that financial liabilities ratio, I was under the impression that that was up 100% was our rate revenue. So our rate revenue is what, 20 odd million or 22 million or something?
Through the Mayor, I think it's around 25 in the coming budget, 24, 25. And this
Okay.
is also projecting that our rate revenue will go up as well.
Okay.
So it's looking at it in that particular year as well. So if the revenue goes up and the borrowings go up, it's making that adjustment as it goes through.
So you're saying that in 10 years our rate's going to go up by $4 million or $5 million?
Could do.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm just suggesting that's more than 100%.
Yeah. Based on growth and CPI increases. So that's what the plan is showing us. Whether it comes into effect depends on way too many variables that far out in the plan.
Okay, no, fair enough. It just, implies to me that we're going to be more than 100%. The other comment that I wanted to make was again along the lines of what Councillor Robinson keeps telling us in relation to the significant amount of money that's not taken into account in these programs. I agree with you with these two reports. I didn't say in the first one because it's a different report to this one. The one that I'm significantly concerned about is the Arts and Cultural Centre on page 22, which is in here is $10 million, and I believe is in the asset management plans is $10 million as well. The thing that concerns me about that is at our last workshop in relation to that proposal, the Arts and Cultural Centre, we received information that that building could be significantly more expensive than $10 million. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't have that figure in there rather than, I just don't know that that's being entirely honest with the community. So I think that we should personally I believe that we should update that figure to what we've been led to believe would be the real cost.
Through the Mayor, and I apologise, I'm not 100% sure what's still in confidence and what's not. Yeah. So in terms of what's included in here was what we knew at the time when we put it together. If there's new information comes to light, we would obviously need to update the plan going forward. But I guess in terms of this particular document, you're right, it might not be the entire picture for the Arts and Culture Centre, but there would be community consultation on that particular design going forward with more reports back to council coming out of confidence and the like. So there would be opportunity for the public to provide their feedback on whatever level of the spending and whatever design goes forward. But yeah, I take your point. It may not be 100% accurate and it may be under what is actually required. But that's just based on what I had known at the time. And I guess I'll be led by the chamber how much they would like to include in there, knowing that you sort of don't want to prejudice any commercial opportunities you may have by going out with figures that may indicate how much council is willing to pay.
Oh, well, I understand that, and that would be no different to the other projects that are mentioned in here that have got figures. I mean, we always give indicative figures. I'm not suggesting we put the exact amount in or anything like that, but Well, the reason that I brought this up, you know, we are looking at significant debt, and if you factor in the increase that that one project would have on that debt, as well as some of the projects that Councillor Robertson continuously reminds us of, which are very, very real and you know, in the pipeline, it puts this figure, I believe, significantly higher than what is in this document. And so I just wonder whether we are actually going out to our community with a full and accurate picture.
Through the Mayor, this document is tough. This long-term financial plan is really tough, even though you have expanded all of your targets to allow for opportunity and growth. It is really tough and requires council to cut out $7 to $10 million each year of the next 4 to 5 years, looking at your priority projects. And so the way that it's been written is to essentially tell council what you can afford sustainably in terms of the dollar value, and then it's up to you what that mix is. It may mean that if we go ahead with something large like the Arts and Culture Centre, we actually need to do practically nothing else 1 year or 2 years, or split it across 3 years, or whatever that looks like. So I think that this will need to be updated pretty much as soon as it's adopted. We will start working on the next draft with information coming forward. But based on what we know at this point, that's our best estimate of what needs to be included. And in terms of the Arts and Culture Centre, council may decide not to even progress it, and so 10 million can come out. So there's a lot of things that need to be decided on an annual basis with the annual budget that will drastically change the landscape of both the asset management plans and the long-term financial plan going forward.
Oh, thank you. And again, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I still believe that we have to have this document, and we have produced this document. The document should be as accurate as it can be. And you're 100% right. We can't afford all of these things, and that's another one of my points. You know, we should be modifying our wish list before this document goes out, so that we can be honest with our community, instead of just having all this, you know, pie in the sky stuff. It's probably not the best way to say it, but anyway, that's only my opinion, of course. So anyway, I don't believe that the document's entirely accurate. So I'm not going to support this recommendation. I know it's only going out to consultation. I know we're not endorsing it, but I don't believe that we should be sending this document out to a consultation, because I don't support it. I don't support this level of debt. Ever since I've been on council and before, I've always been talking about, you know, keeping rate rises in line with CPI and maintaining low debt levels, and if anything, reducing debt levels. I'm still strongly of that opinion. It's certainly what I've told the community. This document is the opposite to that. And therefore, unfortunately, I won't be supporting it. And I don't think we should be presenting it to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I also have issues with this document on its accuracy, and the idea of going out to public consultation is to get feedback from our community on what we believe it's going to cost our community to implement major projects, or our major assets, or our maintenance and renewals and upgrades, etc., etc. If we want proper feedback from our community, we have to give them the right information. If we're not giving them the true information, it's found out we haven't given them the information when we do have it, I think that is a smear on our credibility as a council. We have two documents being presented. One's the Arts and Culture, which shows a figure, which Councillor Glasbrook's spoken about, and the Sporting Precinct in Encounter Bay. We have a figure already presented twice in a major report, which is under confidence. We don't have to provide the exact figure, but surely we can get somewhere close to what the figure could be. Now, if we've got to go out and spend a lot of money on getting these reports done, and concept plans, and there's costings put against it, then they should be included if we've got to be honest with our community and want proper feedback. It may be embarrassing to us, the fact that our debt is going to be huge, and maybe a backlash from our community will make us have to sit down and make some decisions of what stays and what goes. But we are here to represent our community and be honest with them. And if we're not going to produce a long-term financial plan which has the most accurate figures in there, what we can project at the moment, Those two figures in there are way below what is really been presented to council already in confidence. So I'm not saying we give them the true figure, because that's in confidence still, but certainly let's give them more of a realistic figure of what these costs are. So as it stands, I won't be supporting this long-term financial plan as it is written, because it's inaccurate and we're not being honest with our community if we send it out.
There any further discussion on this? Councillor Hales, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just, I'm going to prattle momentarily while I gather my thoughts on this matter. I certainly hear what my colleagues are saying in regards to levels of debt. Absolutely, that's one particular issue that Councillor Glasbrook and I see differently. And you ask 10 economists and they'll give you 10 different answers on what is the right level of debt. It's something that economic theory, there are two major schools, and one says debt is great and one says it's the source of all evil, and there's lots in between. And Councillor Glasbrook and I sit at different ends of that, especially at a time where interest rates are better than they've ever been, and if you can lock it in at this level, why wouldn't you? I think going towards the contentious point of debate about the figures contained in this document, we've got to remember that we're looking at what council's intending to spend, as well as what monies might be coming in from other sources in relation to these projects, but also what the designs of these projects are. Council hasn't made decisions on what any of these major projects actually look like, and therefore to suggest that there isn't actual accurate costing on them, I would say is beyond us at this point in time. I would say that we haven't made a decision, as the presentation in relation to sports and rec facilities is a prime example. We saw many different options of what it could look like and different models which you could go with, which didn't leave us with a firm answer of what we're actually going to pursue and therefore what it's actually going to cost. So I think building a straw man around these figures are bad, so let's throw it out, we don't like debt, goodbye, isn't entirely fair. Are they going to be these figures when we get to doing the actual project? No, they're not. But that's the nature of the beast in relation to these. And I'm very okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that when we've made a decision around it, absolutely, we'll be honest and say, this is what it's cost because we've decided to do this and build this type of facility, and that's what it costs. But at this point, we don't know A, B, C, D, so how can we say that, oh, Z's inaccurate? I think we need to be fair to the processes around this, and therefore I'm happy to support and send this out to public consultation because I think a lot of work's gone into it. I think it's a document that reflects, by and large, an accurate picture of what we're going for. And as Kelly said, as soon as this document's made, the day after it's obsolete because it will start to get reviewed because things change, and that's a reality to life. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. I'll now put the recommendation to proceed with public consultation in relation to the long-term financial plan to the chamber. All those in favour? And those against? That's lost. Thank you. Councillor Hales?
May I call a division, please?
Certainly. All those in favour? Just wait for so Councillor Hales, Councillor Schofield, Councillor Littley, and those against, Councillor Charles, Councillor Glasbrook, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Robertson. That motion is lost. And
Excuse me, Mayor Jenkins.
yes,
I was wondering if I can ask the advice of our acting CEO, Director Pat House, with the mind to progressing this, because I know we have to go out to public consultation and we have to get this, get a document endorsed at the end of the day. Would it be prudent for us to move a motion, consider, some changes so we can move forward rather than?
Yes, through the Mayor, Council certainly needs to find some common ground on what it needs to go out to consultation for the long-term financial plan. Perhaps the best way to do that is through a workshop, so we can go through some of those sticking points that have been raised tonight and get some traction so we can put it back to Council. We'll look to organising that in the next few days. With a view to perhaps bringing it to the April Council meeting. Would that work, Kelly? Or does it need a meeting before that? Yep, we'll have a look at what dates are available and how soon we can get it back in front of you.
Mayor Jenkins, could we not use next Monday night's informal gathering to discuss it?
Graham and Kelly will get back to us with a date that's possible, Councillor Kemp. We don't have any confidential items, and so at 7:20 I announce the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everybody.